Sacred Heart weightlifting team got destroyed by COVID, and then we got kicked out of the weight room we were training in. And so at one point there were 20 platforms that we'd utilize, and whenever everyone was done, all the athletic teams, we could train in there. We got bumped out of there into a new building, and they built it the wrong way. Over to a suspended floor over all the offices. It's over a bowling alley, and you can't drop the weights. So we had to move into our lab. And so we have 6 platforms in the lab. But because of that, our recruiting has dropped off a ton. So at one point, we had about 20 people on the weightlifting team between men and women, and now we have like 4.
Oh, geez.
So we're going to try and rebuild again. It's just been really hard not being on main campus. We have a branch building right down the road, and so people don't see us training. And we have a closed lab, so you have to have permission to get in there. So it's been kind of tough. And then in the local gym in Brantford, we have about 20 members. So a couple high-level lifters and a lot of beginners, a couple masters athletes.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully this year with, everything, no masks, classes open, hopefully more people in person as well. That'll open up some more avenues for you guys and get some more lifters back in. But, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, and if you're over at Rutgers, tough. I know one of the strength coaches there. His name is David Bowden.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you run into him,
yeah,
he's
I know
one
Bowden.
of my previous students.
Yeah, he did an internship with us as well.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he did an internship here at Ripped. He's Tom's River guy, so I actually, when I was up there Wednesdays, I stopped by to see him because he's working in a brand new facility with lacrosse and soccer. Oh, awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I'll have to bring you up to him then. And then, I was just, getting your background and everything. You trained as an Olympic lifter underneath Leo Totten as well?
I still compete.
Yep. Awesome.
I guess this is my 12th year competing, so still competing now. Under Leo, still train. Trying to go back to American Open finals and nationals in the next year, so still getting after it there. I'm a Masters athlete now, but I'm just going to compete in the Open. I'm not going to go Masters. I'll just retire after I'm done.
Yeah, you're not going the Masters Nationals route?
I don't think so.
It's going to be in PA, too, for this upcoming year.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah, it'll be close, but either way. So, yeah, how did you find Leo early on? How did you start training with him? Kind of like your experiences there, because we've taken a couple lifters down and done the spring fling down in Virginia Beach, and I've met him a couple times. So, yeah, how did that start off with Leo and everything for you?
So I was living in the area, and I just went on the USA Weightlifting website and looked at coaches near me, and it just happened that Leo was about a half an hour from where I lived. So I shot him an email. He gave me a call and invited to train with him. And at the time, he was training with a really small crew, like 6 people, in the bottom of a high school. So they had like 3 platforms. All of us had to share platforms. And I just started training with him. And then it just kind of built up from there. About 2 years after lifting, I got certified USAW Level 1. And then I went to school down in East Tennessee, studied under Dr. Michael Stone at the Olympic training site for weightlifting. I got my level 2 and then built up from there. So after I graduated, that's when I moved to Connecticut, went to Sacred Heart, and I've been there ever since. So that was kind of my path going through. Was Leo knew Dr. Stone. That's the only school at the time that was offering a PhD in sports science, and they had an Olympic training site at the same facility. So I was able to coach full-time for multiple years, the weightlifters, get my degree at the same time. So it's kind of like a good partnership.
Oh, that's great. And Leo was connected with the high school there, you said?
Yeah, he was an athletic director and a coach for his whole career. And so at the high school that he had retired from, they let him lift in the basement. So we did that for a couple years, and he had all his equipment there.
Yeah. I want to say one of the first weightlifting meets I brought an athlete to, it was in Jersey, close to the border of Pennsylvania. I'm trying to remember.
Morristown.
Pivotal?
Oh, yeah, Pivotal, yep.
Yeah, it was at Pivotal, and he was there helping to run that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was a branch of East Coast Gold at the time, or...
Yeah, at one point their main base was in Morristown, New Jersey, in the bottom of the gym. So there's like a gymnasium there, and they had a training facility in the bottom. That was where the base of East Coast Gold was, because they had a team house that they owned, and the national level lifters would live in that house rent free and train at Morristown. And that was kind of funded by the guy that ran Works On, because they were distributing out of New Jersey.
Joe Delago?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
And then they eventually moved to Pivotal for a while because Victor Gallego was there. And then it's moved out of there now. They have their own club still, but just not affiliated with East Coast Gold.
Got it. Yeah.
Yep.
I appreciate this a lot because I've been trying to get down to how they were connected and everything through all the representatives now on the USA or USO board. And also Jim Rudder, I'm kind of close with him as well.
Yeah.
And, he's kind of brought up that and, falling out and things that have the moving parts throughout the area as we try and rebuild and the connections that I'm looking to make to help it regrow. So, yeah, I appreciate that. But, all right, great. Yeah. So, I've got, pleasure to meet him a couple times, Leo Totten, which is good. But, on the other side of things, we just had some more like sciencey questions kind of based off of what we do here with our Olympic lifters, what we do with our team sport athletes. We do the majority of our power development comes from cleans and dumbbell jumps. We do some hex bar jumping with our college athletes. And then obviously on the Olympic side of things, we use all the Olympic movements. So look, the AEL stuff and the training that you're researching right now, I know a lot of it isn't fully developed or you haven't finished your research on it. It came out with the papers. But just to get to go back over some of the stuff that you did in the podcast, because I'm trying to get a jump on a lot of this right now as I use a ton of triphasic training and also like jumping for testing just to kind of see readiness, all of that good stuff. Just want to kind of like go over the percentages that you use for eccentric to concentric again, maybe problems that arise within like using the weight releasers as I just ordered mine this week. Just things like that. Just kind of go through it again.
Yeah. So, the theory behind it is that you can handle more weight on the eccentric than on the concentric. And there is some evidence that if you load more weight on the way down and then it removes itself from whatever you're using, you get some potentiation effect on the concentric movement. But what we're really finding now is that you have to be strong enough to do it. And so what we're finding is even people that we would consider relatively strong, if you're not at the correct level, you won't get any benefit from it. And so really like above 2 times your body weight in the back squat and above 1.5 times your body weight in the bench press is pretty much necessary for any maximal or supramaximal accentuated eccentric loading to be used. So that's like our first consideration. If you're not at those levels, at this point, I'm not even going to recommend the more advanced versions of AEL. Submaximal AEL is everything below 100. And then as long as the eccentric is heavier than the concentric. And here's where you might get into some jumping exercises, jumping with dumbbells with your body weight, using weight releasers on other exercises like straight bar jumps, like bars in the back squat position, doing jumps there. We just use weight releasers on the trap bar. So you're standing there, you step back and you do it with a trap bar jump. And so what we're finding is that it can get too heavy very quickly when it comes to jumping. So the most recent study we just ran, we had 20 to 50 kilos on a barbell of straight weight. So starting at 20, which is basically the unloaded barbell or the unloaded trap bar. And then we went 20, 30, 40, 50 of straight weight. And we just did jumps there with that to see like how high you jump, what your reactive strength index modified was. And then we looked at loads of 10, 20, and 30 kilos on the hooks. And what we found is, not surprisingly, 30 kilos is too heavy. Most people can't handle that because if you're going to do the jump at some of the top weights, it's as much as 80 kilos on the way down. And so even with the strongest people, that was too much. And so most people did the best with either 10 to 20 kilos. And what we found is that there was no decrease in jump height and there was no decrease in the reactive strength index when we ran the statistics but there was no benefit. So they didn't get any immediate potentiation from the jumps. So what we're finding is that they're doing more eccentric work. The force is probably increasing. That's what's maintaining your jump height as your velocity drops off. So we might use this in a phase where you're really working on force production. And so that's really the study that we're running right now to determine what else is happening. And so we know that velocity is going to take a hit, but then maybe we drop out the AEL and then focus on velocity for the next block. So maybe we do unweighted jumps or accelerated jumps with bands, and that will pull the velocity up later on. So one's more force-oriented now, and then you work more velocity-oriented later. And so that's kind of on the jumping side. We've had pretty good success with dumbbell AEL, and I've also seen people using chains, so that way that the dumbbells don't bounce on the floor. So from a practical perspective, I'm not sure what type of dumbbells you have in the gym, but sometimes those hex dumbbells that they make, they bounce sideways, and you don't want to take someone's ankle out. So we've put gymnastics mats down and had people drop those hex dumbbells on the mats. They tend not to roll in. Or if you have the circle dumbbells, they don't really roll to the side. So that's how you can do it with those. And then they have the chains. So you basically hold the chains you would put on the barbell in your hands. You start up on your toes. You let the chains pull you down to the floor. You release them in the bottom and then jump up in the air. And that's nice because the chains don't move anywhere. So they're not going to land on you. And it's much easier transition. So you don't change the mechanics. So that's what's kind of hard is some people need to get used to either dropping the dumbbells and making it seamless, because if you stop at any point, you cut the stretch shortening cycle and it doesn't carry over anymore. So that's why it takes a little bit of time to get used to it, and you want to keep the athlete safe at the same time. So that's kind of the dumbbell, jump, trap bar, and straight bar. And then we can talk about, how it's typically done with the back squat and the bench press. So that's really what people are using it for at that point. So do you have any questions about the jumps that we did?
Yeah, you said that the velocity, right, isn't exactly there, or there's no potentiation to increase it when you backload it, especially over, you said 20 kilos, I believe, or over 30 kilos.
Yeah, we noticed that once you get to that 30 kilo of hook weight,
yep,
things really start to drop off. So I basically did a spectrum of loading to find out what would really be not working. So then that would be like our upper limit. So 30 kilos of hook weight, 15 kilos on each side was too much for people to handle. And so 10 to 20 kilos seems okay. It seems like there's like a cliff there. It starts to fall off.
And the RSI, like the response that they got from the strength index, that was about the same throughout?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. But since we know that the impulse and the velocity is going down, because you can see the curve extending out, the only way to maintain that then is your force goes up. So it's giving you a more force-dependent outcome.
Awesome. Did you guys have questions on that?
No.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So the dumbbell jumps, I appreciate the tip because we do have the hex dumbbells here, and we're actually going into our next phase as we finish off the summer program. We're going to be doing the release. So they jump up with the weight, they come down, release, and then jump up again. Yes, contrast, we call it, to keep it simple with them.
Yep. The other thing we've tried is to put plyo boxes of the same height at the bottom of the jump, like where they would be at the very bottom position, and then basically just set the dumbbell down on the plyo box instead of dropping it on the floor. And then that makes it more seamless in the transition. But some places don't have enough plyo boxes to do that successfully. So it's another way that we've tried it so that the dumbbells don't fly around.
Awesome. Kind of like a weight releaser, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you just kind of like lower down to the bottom part of their jump. They're going to just set it on that box and then jump up as high as you can. We've done two ways to kind of estimate what to do. We did as a percentage of their back squat max, and then we've also done a percentage of their body weight max. And what we did was we started at 10% of their body weight and went up to 50%. And we found that anything more than like 30% of their body mass, it starts to have a negative effect on their jumps. So I would keep it like anywhere from like 5 to 25% of their body weight of the dumbbell seems to be most effective. And so if you're going to do it across a couple weeks, maybe start at 5 to 10% and then build up and see how they're responding to it. 50% was way too much. People were not stoked about jumping with half of their body weight on the way down.
Yeah. A lot of our athletes don't have the grip strength to even hold on to that for like a period of time, like as we're getting ready to load. So I think they're compensating through their upper half, so they're not able to utilize their lower push and everything from the bottom.
Yeah, we had a guy that was 240 pounds, so he had to hold 60s in each hand, and you could just tell that his mechanics were off because you're just not used to lowering that much weight quickly on the way down, like an extra 120 pounds. So I would cut it off around 30% of their body weight as being like an upper limit to have any effect on jumping. And I would say that would be for your strongest people. Like around a 2 times body weight squat, they could probably handle like 30% at the top end.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, or switch to the hex bar, I guess, at that point as well.
Yep, you could do the hex bar with the weight releasers. Yep.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, I'm just taking a couple of notes here. I appreciate that.
Did you get the Rogue weight releasers? They're
got
the only ones really on the market.
The Titan ones.
Okay. Weigh them when they come in because the Rogue ones are a weird weight. They're like 17 pounds. So you're like, great. How are we going to make this even amounts? The old hooks that we have, the company is no longer in, that they went out of business. They made 5-kilo hooks. They were an even 5 kilos, which made it really nice because then you would know exactly what to add. Now the Rogue ones and maybe the Titan ones are like a weird weight. So you might just have to find like those micro loading plates and always leave them on there so that it's like an even, I think they're 8.5 pounds each. So just make them 10 pounds each to make it easier on you.
I see. Okay. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Also, the thing that I was kind of getting worried about was it's kind of a square rectangular shape. It's not like cylinder-wise for the plate loading. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's no problem. It just goes right through the middle of the plate.
All right. Okay. It doesn't affect how it like moves or anything because it's already somewhat undulating, like as you scooch back. So I didn't know if that would like sway. It kind of keeps it stabilized enough that it doesn't affect it too much.
Yeah, because it's a triangle and it slopes down, so the plate will stick against the bottom of the pin because it's sloped on the down part. And then you want to make sure that the hooks fall off in the right way and you have them facing the correct way because you can flip the hook backwards and forwards, and we try not to have it pull them forward. We don't want it to release to the front, especially if they're doing any back squatting, because that tends to pull people forward and then they fail into the rack. So typically we lower down and the hooks will go off the backside because people are already tilted forward. And so that tends to help. Same thing in the bench press, have them fall off towards their feet and not towards their face because you don't want the bar to come back over their neck. And so those are just some practical things we've found. Like when it gets really heavy, people tend to fall forward into the rack. And so when people first do it, if they get into their toes, then it'll just pull them straight into the corner of the rack with the hooks.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you, how long have you been doing this and training with the AEL?
I've probably been doing this for 4 years.
Awesome.
Doing research and playing around with them and having people use them in the lab. We did some early studies with the back squat and the bench press, and then we've kind of expanded from there.
Yeah, I was thinking also maybe for right now with the team, we have jerk dip to split jerk. And I was thinking maybe on like a jerk dip, right, or just an eccentric jerk dip, they could have some type of weight release. Have you ever done any?
I have thought about this.
Yeah.
You would have to, jerk blocks.
Yep.
You would probably have to set some plyo boxes on the outside of the jerk blocks and then put the weight releasers on the very end of the bar so that they would fall to those boxes to fall off, and then they could go right into the jerk on the next rep.
And
that
then
would probably work.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Yeah, I didn't know if you've done that. That makes sense because it's just the length of it, right? If you're a taller athlete, probably not going to reach the ground.
Yeah, and there's a minimum height that the hook can be. And so if you have the jerk blocks there, you'll have to either take one of the jerk blocks out of the middle and have it lower, like they'd have to pick it up from chest height, and then it becomes like a quarter squat before, and it can make it hard. So you might have to have two coaches there with them. So have them stand up, put the hooks on, let them stabilize down to the blocks, and then do the jerk after that.
Whew.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yep.
Yeah. I figured there wasn't a simple way to get that one done, but I thought it might be a good idea.
The other thing you could do is if you do want to overload it that way, put one plate on the end of the bar, have them lower all the way down to the blocks, and then just manually pull the plate off the end of the bar, and then have them do the jerk with the lighter weight after. So you do like a super maximal lowering, put the plates on the box, pull the plate off really quick, and then have them stand up again and then do the jerk right after that. You'd get that immediate stimulus from the eccentric load.
Awesome. Yeah, I was thinking in terms of positioning too. You know, Olympic lifters love to get into their toes when they're driving. Mm-hmm. So I was just thinking if it sits them down, straight down, keeps it vertical, and maybe that would help. But that's a great idea as well. I appreciate it. Some of the other things that you were talking about, we actually, you were mentioning Will Fleming and your research that you're going to be doing with him.
Yep.
We've had him in the facility a number of times for our speed and power summits. Love his stuff. He was probably one of the first coaches that slight mentor, books that I'd read into and everything. Mm-hmm. The research that you're doing with him now for readiness, you guys are comparing the vertical jump, so I guess maximal vertical jump to maximal bar speed of 50% muscle snatch.
Correct.
Are you measuring the velocity on the muscle snatches? Oh, okay. All right. Yep. Yeah, that was my thing because I know you're trying to get it to the point where it's the equipment is less demand, so you could just have it maybe here in our facility where we don't have velocity-based training devices. How would you go about that middle ground there? Or you guys, I know you're still working it out. What are you finding with that?
Yeah, so we did static jumps, counter movement, and depth jumps. So we did 2 at each jump type, and then they would go right into their warm up with the muscle snatch. They do 5 with the empty bar. They do 3 at 25% and 3 at 50%. And then we would take the speed from the fastest muscle snatch. And then what we did was we ran a series of correlations against the jumps. And what we're finding is that peak power in the vertical jumps is highly correlated with the muscle snatch speed, which makes sense because if your power output is higher that day, your speed is going up. Interestingly, the jump height was not as strongly correlated. So jump height every day wasn't as important as the peak power. So peak power has a velocity component to it. You have your force and your velocity to get the peak power. And so peak power was more correlated than the jump height. So how you jump is probably more important. And then there is some moderate correlations with the reactive strength index modified and the reactive strength index from the depth jump. So ideally, what I would like to see from this is once Will does it with more people, because I only have 3 people that were qualified to do it in the gym that have done the muscle snatch proficiently. Once you get a bigger sample, more things might rise to the top, and I hope that the correlation increases in strength as we go with more people. So Will's probably got 6 to 10 people that can do it over there. And then once we have more data, ideally, because most people don't have a force plate or a jump mat, they could just get a really inexpensive VBT device, do 3 muscle snatches as a warm-up. It will take less than 5 minutes, and then they could be confident in whether they can push it that day or not. So you have your consistency, and if it's really high one day, you're going to get after it. If it's really low one day, maybe we back off. And that's the end goal, is to remove the burden of anyone having to have a force plate to jump test people.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to be a part in that. I don't know what the criteria is. If you guys have certain strength numbers that you're looking or as a qualification. Also,
there's no strength numbers. We just you need to be proficient in the muscle snatch. It's only at 50%, and then there has to be force plates there
force plates
in order to collect the data. So that's the hardest thing. We got lucky in that the folks that work with Will have the same force plates we do. So it's really easy to pull the data.
We're pretty connected to Monmouth University, and I believe they have force plates over there.
Mm-hmm.
So I could check in with that and see if we could get some data running.
Yep.
Would love to do that. Also, they had the velocity-based stuff, so that'd be easier rather than me buying it, although I am looking into that as well.
Yeah, we have GymAwares, and then we just got Rep 1 sensors. So if you're looking into those, Rep 1's pretty cheap. It's like $3.99 per sensor. So they're probably the best one, the most high quality at the lowest price point right now.
And that has the cable attachment, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I saw Flex. A lot of people are using Flex now too, where it's the end cap, and then it has the sensor mat.
Yeah, and I don't know how expensive that is, though, for that device. I'm not sure if it's comparable to the Rep 1 or not.
Yeah.
Because the GymAware is just not affordable. It's $2,000.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
Nobody can afford that. It's not worth it.
No. Yeah, so I'll look into the Rep 1. I was looking at Flex's. It's similar. I think it's like $100 more. But I was just thinking for convenience and being able to switch it on and off. But yeah, I'll look into the Rep 1 for sure.
I know a couple of people that have it. They really enjoy it. So I don't see any problems if you get the Flex unit.
All right, awesome. I'll look into that as well. So I think Sarah had a question. Actually, we already answered. Yeah, we answered that a little bit.
I have a question going back to the jumps. You were talking about negative effects on their jumps when you start overloading too much. What kind of negative effects are you seeing? Is it just like decrease in potentiation, the stress shortening cycle, or jump height?
Jump height starts to tank, and their mechanics change. So I notice, like, you can't write it up in a study, but if you watch someone jump with too much weight, especially on athletes that are weaker, their movement mechanics completely change, and it stops looking like a counter movement jump anymore when you get too heavy. So basically, once you see it and you think someone is jumping in a strange way, I would take some weight off, and it happens very quickly.
Gotcha.
So we had some people at like 2.25 times their body weight in the back squat, and then we had people that were like a little bit over 1, like, you know, like the risk of mortality weak students that we have, and they really couldn't jump very well with the weights.
Okay. And then when you brought the idea about lowering dumbbells or X-bar to a plyo box or whatever it might be, did you run into the issue where the athletes would stop to drop them and then really take away from the stress shortening cycle, or is it nice and fluid? I feel like if I had it, I would probably stop to drop it a few times and get comfortable. As younger athletes probably might be a little bit nervous about the dumbbells rolling or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, they learned pretty quick. So we did a familiarization session that was really light. But once they started to get it and they figured out like where they need to drop it in the transition point, everybody picked it up fairly quickly. It was fairly simple to integrate in.
Okay.
We see similar technical breakdown when we're doing our dumbbell jumps, like you said, in the weaker athletes, the younger athletes. So usually stick to either a lower rep range or just lower weights. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're trying to find that sweet spot right now as we're doing a ton more of them with our field sport athletes, field and court.
Yep.
So yeah, we appreciate that. Some other things we've tested. I had mentioned earlier that we were testing the counter movement jump and the static. The static jump, do you go hands back? Do you go hands on hips, seated? How do you test your static?
We usually put a PVC pipe behind the neck in the back squat position because they're familiar with that. And then we'll go to 90 degrees in knee flexion. Hold until the stretch shortening cycle dissipates. Then we count them down 3, 2, 1, and they'll jump from that static position.
Okay, so dissipation of the stretch shortening cycle, is there a time slot for that?
No, we just tell them to go down and hold until they get to like a baseline, and then we give them enough time where there wouldn't be any residual effect. So basically like 1 to 2 seconds afterwards.
Okay, so yeah, so if you were to count, you'd say if you had somebody seated, you count down from 5, then it'd be good to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, seated's easy because you can just have them pause on the box, and that basically gets rid of everything. The problem that I've had with the boxes is people rock into the jump instead of coming straight up. So they get seated, and then they start on their heel and roll into their toes to get the jump when they come off the box. So if you just squat down to 90, that forces them to be in that static position, and then they just have to initiate everything with no counter pushing off the floor. So I've run into that.
I definitely messed up in my testing there because I had their hands back. I didn't let them rock through their upper body, through their torso.
Yep.
But I had their hands back and just had them drive straight up. I told them to remain flat-footed while they did it, but I guess you can't consider it a static jump. I was thinking more just concentric, so they're using their hands in a bottom position, right? If you're using your arm swing, you would have that. But related to weightlifting, I should probably do, like you said, the PVC on the back.
Yeah, and arm swing is a skill. And so with a lot of the younger athletes, if you want to get this as a baseline to track over time, restricting the arm movement really tells you the total contribution of the lower body by removing the arm swing. So it makes a really nice comparison across the athletes. So then you'll know truly the effect of their concentric abilities. And so it scales really well with getting stronger. So the stronger you become, your static jump will climb up with it. And so if you remove the arm swing, you can look at the direct carryover of the strength work on the static jump.
Because of the longer amortization phase, I guess, in the bottom, just with strength correlation to that?
Yeah, and basically the stronger you become in relation to your body weight, the easier time you have jumping. And so especially if you're working with weightlifters, it's not uncommon to see 60 centimeters static jump, 70 centimeter counter movement jump for weightlifters because they're so strong. Really, like elite weightlifters, counter movement jumps will be like 65 to 75 centimeters.
Yeah, we're seeing that in some of our upper level male athletes.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to retest that.
You have a switch mat?
Jump mat?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, I think it's called just jump mat or something.
Jump.
But is that what you use?
Yep.
You have like the little handheld computer that's on a wire, sticks out to the side.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that thing's perfect. Super easy to use. That's what you can use in the field.
Yeah, it's been really good to us. I haven't had any issues. We had a couple of people land on the cord and pull it out, but I mean that's normal. Have you based off of those like two jumps and kind of what you're giving me here with how to set them up for static? I was looking into some stuff about the eccentric utilization ratio.
Yep.
Have you worked with that a lot? I'm assuming.
Yeah, we use that with our team sport athletes mainly because it has to do with the contribution of the stretch shortening cycle, and some sports are heavily dependent on that. It's really easy to calculate. So you do 2 to 3 static, 2 to 3 counters, take the average of them, and then you calculate the eccentric utilization ratio, and you can use that for your programming. So it can tell you if someone's strong enough, if you need to build in more plyometrics, if they're very powerful, maybe they need to get more strength involved in order to top them off. So there's some really good standards you can look up. You just go on Google, type in that, and you'll get the numbers that you want. And it's really simple because those jumps are ones you already got integrated in, should give you some pretty good information.
So the closer to 1 they are, the better they are utilizing, or the further?
Yeah, I think the closer to 1, the better. Then you can get above 1, and that's like what you're shooting for. I think for some sports, it's like 1.2 to 1.4 is like what you need for performance.
Okay. A lot of the weightlifters were really close to 1 that I tested. Like they were equal almost.
Correct, and that's because they are good at using the stretch shortening cycle, but their static jumps are usually very high compared to regular athletes. So you have to keep that in mind that weightlifters' static jumps are going to greatly outpace other athletes because they start a lot from that bottom position in the snatch and clean, and it directly carries over to the static jump. So for them, it's a little bit harder to visualize because their static and counter are not that far apart typically.
Yeah, it was the athletes that have been with me for, I would say, 2 years or more. They were all like 0.9 something. Their static was actually stronger, and I started to get worried. That's why I started looking a lot more into this. Like, okay, then they need to sit close as 1 as possible so they're not just static freaks, just being able to concentrically move weight and not absorb anything.
Yeah, and I use quite a bit of jumps with the athletes that are more force dominant. So I have a lot of athletes that are pretty strong, but they can't really use that for speed. So I'll use a lot of jumps in the middle to late portions of their training. So we'll start with like weighted pogo hops. We'll do counter movements, repeated counter movements. Then we'll do some depth jumping, and we'll even do some AEL depth jumps at the end to increase their ability to absorb and use that elastic energy. And I find it directly carries over to the jerk. That's where I've noticed the biggest effect is being able to rebound out of the bottom, getting some of the tendons to remodel and become more stiff allows you to get a better jerk from those athletes.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's kind of where we need it as well. So, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Sarah, you had the question about the development of the app. At the end of the podcast, you were talking about development of some apps, or people are working with some new AI, some new technology for injury prevention, or reducing the risk, or kind of finding the risk ahead of time, which is awesome. And we're actually connected with a physical therapy center. So it's Elite Sports Performance Center. We have Elite Sports Performance Physical Therapy, and then Reach Potential Training. So we're heavily connected with that side and always trying to integrate with them to reduce the risk. So something like that is like a home run for us here. Where you guys stand with that? Where's the research going? How are you guys coming along with that?
So right now, the first thing we're doing is the performance analysis. And so we're looking at 3 levels of performance. And then in the background, there's going to be AI and machine learning to predict performance. So at the bottom level of the pyramid is the individual athlete's readiness per week. And so we have things like jumps, questionnaire, total workload that they've completed. We have their HRV, resting heart rate, all that from the Whoop strap. And then we're getting things from the polar units for like distance covered, like heart rate zone. Above that, you have their player efficiency rating and game score, which are 2 metrics that you calculate. And at the very top of the pyramid is win-loss record. So what we're doing is trying to determine at each level what underlies each one. That way we can predict performance at the end of the year. So what we've found so far is that your training score, what we call a TRIMP score, your training impulse for the entire week, actually dictates the next week's readiness, which is what the literature already shows, but we confirmed it. And then the next 2 analysis that we have is going to be what underlying basic performance levels affect your performance in the game. So both game score and your efficiency rating has a lot to do with high-speed sprinting, distance covered, your acceleration. So all the things you would expect in a game. If it's going well, you're doing more work, you're beating your opponents. And then eventually we hope to be able to predict the win-loss record based on those so the coaches know what they need to focus on. From that same data set, all we're going to do is take the same inputs, but we're going to look at what preceded an injury in an athlete and then let the machine learning and algorithms tell us what's most important that was going on prior to the injury. So we had quite a few injuries last season. We had like a tibial plateau fracture, 1 ACL. We had a couple other things that were soft tissue related. And then we're ranking them in severity. So we have like a 0, which means you got injured, but you didn't lose any training time. Injured, but you came back in a few days. Severe injury, but you returned a few weeks later. And then a 3 is complete injury. So like you're out for the season. So that would be like an ACL or that tibial plateau. Like you basically lose the whole season. So once we have these different grades, then we're going to look at each athlete that was injured and let the machine learning tell us what occurred before that's the most likely predictor. And so you have the polar units with all the data behind that. We have the information coming in from the Whoop strap, like is there anything in there that's indicating they're not adapting well. We have your questionnaire data to look at stress and recovery. And then we have your jumps. So we can look at what was happening within the counter movement jumps across the weeks. in relation to the volume, and then we can see basically what's leading up to the injury. And so none of that's been run yet, so I don't have any results. And it's kind of surprising when the data comes out, so I don't want to, put my own bias in it, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And so how much of that is put in or inputted from the athletes themselves? A lot of it.
The only thing they input into the system, which is subjective, is their RPE score for each session that they do. So they hit like a 60-minute practice, they rate it an 8, and then we get an arbitrary unit of, let's say 48, be like 480 would be their arbitrary score. So we have to have the anchoring part of the RPE, which is subjective, and then their questionnaire data is subjective. So basically, you have 4 recovery and 4 stress questions. We want your recovery to be as close to the 6 as possible, and we want your stress to be as close to 0 as possible. And as those start dropping and going up, then we know that you're becoming more stressed and less recovered. So that's called the SRSS. If you want to use it, it's called the Short Recovery and Stress Questionnaire. And so those would be the only 2 subjective items that we have. Everything else would be objective data that comes from our measurement.
That's great. SRSS. Great.
Do you use Team Builder?
We use Train Heroic.
Yeah, you can build it in there.
Yeah, it has the readiness questionnaire in the beginning, which I haven't been using too much, but I'm taking a new position at a high school that's local, and I'm not going to be here in the mornings and here when the Olympic lifters train. So I'm looking for things like that to kind of incorporate, so I just have more checkpoints for them, see where they're at for sure. So. And
if you can't integrate it in with Team Heroic, you can easily set it up in Google Sheets, and then all you do is you make your own questions 4 and 4, and then you can add anything else you want, like, are you really sore today? Like out of 0 to 10, how sore are you? How many hours did you sleep last night? Is your body weight normal? Those are like all things to ask. And then hit your 8 questions. And then if you have the Google Forms set up, it will just give them a code. So you can just have them put their first and last name in, and it will auto-populate in a big Google Excel sheet for you. And they can save that icon on their phone, whether they have an Apple or an Android. And then as soon as they wake up in the morning, have them click that button, the form will auto-populate, fill it out, and it will go to your sheet. So that's another way you can do it really easy if Train Heroic won't give you the option to log it. That's like an easy way for you. And then you can just filter out the sheet for an athlete and just search for their initials. And then that will give you their output for however many weeks you want to follow them.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a pretty easy way to do it.
Yeah, another consideration. Awesome. Yeah, well, I think that's the majority of all the questions that I had or that arose out of the podcast. Maybe another thing would be like GA positions. Do you guys offer? I saw some from the strength conditioning staff.
Yep.
Do you offer an online program for masters? Do you guys?
We don't have an online. So right now we typically have 2 GA research positions. So like next fall, we'll have 2 open GA positions. We have a scholarship for a female strength coach. It's called the Lori S. Bigelow Scholarship. That'll be open this next fall, so next year. And that covers full tuition. And so that's any female pursuing a career in strength and conditioning, that's open to them. And then the athletics on the other side has 3 GAs at any one time that are open. So they just filled 1, so that'll be filled for 2 years. But next year they'll have 2 positions coming open. So I think next fall we'll have like 5 open GA positions that people could apply for.
So you guys are still looking for a female research for this upcoming year or for next fall? I apologize.
For next fall. So every 2 years that comes available. So the current student will be graduating this upcoming May, and then that scholarship comes open again. So it's an every other year scholarship. And so we'll be sending out a lot of info for that. And then I have 2 research GAs on the academic side, and we'll probably have 2 athletics GAs on the other side. So quite a few opportunities for people to come in and
Great.
get stuff paid.
Yeah, we have about 6 interns right now, five or six. So we're always looking to point them in the right direction, help them out with their career. So that's great. I appreciate that. And we'll point them your way for sure, whether it works out or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think last thing would just be like recommendations for books and stuff. Maybe based off of where I'm at and the questions that I'm asking you. Do you have anything maybe inside the gym for power related? Maybe outside, just a favorite book?
So like gym related stuff. I don't know if you've read Agile Periodization yet, by Mladen Jovanovic. It's really good. It's got a lot of practical information. It challenges some of the like basic stuff that we think about periodization and makes it more applicable for team sports. So I really enjoyed that book, the way he broke it down. And at the end, he has some really nice practical ways to integrate in different types of training for unpredictable environments. That's why he calls it agile periodization, because things change all the time. So he made it pretty nice in that regard. So that one was good. What else did I just get? I just got the Essentials of Sports Science because I'm going to take that CPSS by the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So that book was pretty good. It's pretty comprehensive. It's got some higher level stuff in there. So that was a good book. I just read through it the first time. Going to read through it again because I'm about to take that test. So that one was nice to try and work through like different ways to analyze performance and monitor. So I'd say those two are good science books that I would go with. You already have Will's velocity-based training book, so you got that one. And have you read Brian Mann's book on VBT?
I haven't, but I just started looking at, I don't remember his last name, I'm going to be honest, Antonio.
Yep, Squalante.
Yeah.
He has the power book. That was really good.
Yeah, I'm halfway through that now. And then Brian Mann, everybody's recommended him. I should have probably started with that, but...
Yeah, I think it's on its 3rd edition now, 2nd or 3rd, so it's much better with updated information. So those work really, they're good resources for using VBT. There's not a ton of good resources on the accentuated eccentric loading except the papers that are out right now. So I just released an open access one with Justin Merrigan. So you can pull that one up. It's kind of how to apply everything and all the stuff we currently know. It was a big review. And that was open access. I don't know if you've seen that one yet, but that would be good for you and your staff to read. We tried to pull in all the current literature that's out.
Where could I find that? Just Google?
I think it's International Journal of Strength and Conditioning. Let's see if this is the website. I'm going to throw it in the chat here.
Thank you.
If you pull this up, all the papers on this website are open access, so there's some good resources on there, and that's where you can find the review. You just type in AEL, it should be the only